This is the most like unnatural setup ever. I have my freaking bedstand here with my laptop, which has the script. And then behind me is just... All right. Oh my goodness. How long? Wait, is this even the right direction I hold the microphone? Anyways, today's video, Pump It Up philosophy. It has been nearly a year at this point. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can be pushing your limits and pump it up. You know, it's been a while since then. I don't even remember the last video I made. I'm expert 1 now though. Hey, that's pretty cool. And now I'm freaking retired, but that's beyond the point. I'll talk about that another time. So, you know, kind of like, you know, as I reflect with myself, I kind of wanted to talk about the more like mental side that allowed me to kind of, you know, push for expert 1. I'll do my best to try and make this as seamless as I can. I do have my laptop over here, which is like out of frame, which has some bullet points, but for the most part, I'm going to try my best to be freeform. It's probably not going to happen. It's been a long day. So when it comes to pushing your limits and pump it up, it's important to actually know like what exactly makes Pump It Up a difficult game. I would like to say there's 4 main aspects. There's the technical, the reading, mental, and physical point. The first 2 being more dependent, I would say, for, you know, the game itself. And then the other 2 are dependent like on yourself, like your actual body. And so for this episode, I'm going to be talking about the mental aspect. At the end, a more physical standpoint, but mostly this will be covering more of the mental aspect. And as a disclaimer, I just want to make it clear, this video is not trying to deter anyone from playing like lower levels or anyone who like wants to stick to their comfort zone or, you know, play like no bar or just freestyle, whatever style they like to play the game. This video is in mind for people that are more like the more rhythm game, like kind of maniac mode sort of kind of vibe. Because Pump It Up is very different in a sense where it's one of the only dance games that kind of thrives itself towards pushing for passing in a sense. And also it's just a very common goal / interest that people do, push their limits in that sense, and a lot of people find enjoyment out of it. So my first aspect of how to push, and again, this is going to be very personal, we're going to be talking about confidence, player confidence. We're going to be talking about the objective facts and more like the subjective feelings you have towards yourself as a player. Something that would be objective is something that's genuinely factual, like what like levels you would generally average. Like I have passed like level 20, I have passed like 21s, and here are where the feelings come in. These can be positive and they can be negative. And for myself, I feel like I don't deserve my level. I suck at this game. I suck at runs. Everyone is better than me. We need to make sure that our negative feelings as ourselves do not affect our Pump It Up performance, as well as letting these feelings push beyond the objective facts for ourselves. I remember back then just feeling so pressured every time I ended up playing a certain number of passing. And even if I did pass, it just sometimes just wasn't enough. I sometimes had days where I passed like 10, and that day I got like 3. I suck at the game. This would overall just create a lot of bad cognitive habits within myself. I would label myself a certain player, like maybe like, I don't know, if everyone else was good at foot speed and I wasn't, I would just think I suck. Or say, because I'm not a run player, I can't play X chart. Even though we should be open-minded and just think to ourselves, hey, you know, this is just a weaker skill set I have. Let's just go back in the future and improve on that skill set. I would like shake my head when I shit missed. Like, I know this is something that like Fethems does, and I think that obviously makes sense because he probably has a much higher standard perfectionist mindset for himself because he's been playing the game for so long. But me just accidentally adapting that towards myself, which was already very negative towards myself, I already treat myself not the best, as well as just constantly slightly adjusting my auto velocity because I was just so nervous. I was just so anxious all the time, and I wasn't able to really just keep my composure in check. And I think in the context of this video, what this leads me to say is how I ended up over-warming up. How could over-warming up be an issue, and what is warming up? So somewhere around my advanced title journey, I would say, again, this was around 21, 22. Whenever I arrived at the arcade, I would overspend my time and my energy into like lower levels for myself. In this case, if I was playing 22s, I would consider like 16 for 18s a lot lower for me. And then like the moment I would like slightly go upwards, like the 19 to 20 folder, I would instinctively get like, I would hesitate. Like I would think I would need to be at peak physical ability for me to kind of like do well or even like kind of attempt this, because what ended up happening was I was kind of traumatized with me trying to get advanced 1 back in XX and then eventually getting in Phoenix. This is a huge wall for me personally that took over like a year, I think. And I think because of that, it made me think that like these numbers are still like a boss level that like I need to like kind of like go in with caution, right? But also because, you know, I was at the time, I was kind of going through like level 20s and 21s really quickly, which by the way is another thing you should definitely not play for rapid improvement and like feel like pressured by like, oh, like, you know, I'm improving so well and I gotta keep up. Don't feel that way. Do not do that. Don't rush yourself. Very unhealthy if you can't achieve your results. And again, I'll talk about that more later. But anyways, even though when I was like improving past like the 21 folder, a part of me inside of me was kind of like, I was popping off during this time. Like I cleared the 21 folder really quickly with the advanced titles and kind of like my confidence was improving, but at the same time in the back of my head, like I was still kind of uncertain. So then that ended up making me like, you know, having to still needing to overly warm up or just, you know, basically being stuck in the past where I just didn't know how much warming up was enough for myself. And that would again waste energy. And so the result of this would be like my warm-up spreads would be like really far and out. I would have like easy charts, which is like again the 16 to 18. I wouldn't like try to 19 through 20 because like, oh, you know, I'm like, I don't think I can quite do it. And then suddenly I would just kind of full go into 21s, which can be very hit or miss. Sometimes my body would be fine, sometimes it wouldn't be. And overall it was just, you know, not an efficient way of like pushing. I would be ready to full send and then my heart would just suddenly jump, which luckily at the time I was pretty physically fit, but otherwise I would just like, if I wasn't, I'd probably just die. And by the end of all of this, at least for myself with just my expectations, again, you gotta keep your expectations in check. How many charts did you end up clearing? You can really, you know, for a lot of people, and what I came to realize later on, just clearing 1 of like what you're trying to like push your limits of like break on is great. That's awesome. And if you can clear more on top of that, hey, that's even better. Sessions that when I really freaking popped off, I had like maybe like 10 plus charts broken, right? And then other times I would have like 3. And I literally remember one day I was like, you know, I'm kind of disappointed in myself. And it's just like, shut up, dude. What the? So all this time I was talking about warming up, right? But what does it actually mean to warm up and pump it up? I mean, in a typical sport, you would have like drills, you would have like stretches, and maybe like a light exercise on that. But what does it mean for pump? The idea of warming up for me is how you can get your body to feel ready to play the game. And so a question can be asked, how much warm up is necessary for me to feel ready? And that's very subjective for each player, but I'm going to be talking about the states of a player throughout your session and how it can be influenced for warming up. So the first one is you're just simply unwarmed up. You're unfocused, you're cold, you can easily panic, you're flopping like a fish. If you're warm, you're like kind of focused. I would say if you're warm, you can still feel the more like mental aspects where I think it's like, you know, you can be focused, but you can also like not and easily panic and get nervous still, as well as still feeling like, you know, there are times where you're gonna fatigue and that's normal. So we talked about not warmed up. We talked about warmed up, which is, you know, most of the time, right? But I want to talk about the upgraded version of being warmed up, and we're going to call this the flow state. The flow state is where you truly, I don't know how to really describe it. You kind of become one with the game. I would say you're basically fully warmed up, you're locked in, you're confident with your ability, and you're just like kind of like, your body is not like physically tense or like locking up. You're not feeling heavy, you're just moving, you're feeling controlled, and even your weaker skill sets might not be that bad. Mind you, getting to the flow state is something that might not always happen for your session. It's something that's more uncommon. And I definitely say being more fit regularly will increase your ability to become this. And I'd like to say like the final piece, which is not really a part of like warmed up in the flow state, is something like maybe like separate, which I would just consider like God mode. You almost become Super Saiyan. You become like a different person. Kind of like infinite energy. You're not even thinking at this point. You are literally just like I can't really describe it. It's like you're right in a trance. The game should pretty much feel effortless. You're probably popping off, and both physically and mentally, you're at the peak. But I would honestly say this is very uncommon, and it'll happen once in a while. So to me, warming up can be an efficient tool to basically maximize the chances of me getting into the flow state. And nowadays, I don't really do it that long. Like I do it for like maybe like between like 3 to 5 songs, around that range. And once I feel like, you know, I mentally feel ready, my body feels good, I know objectively, like if I was like comparing it back then, that objectively I can handle a 20 or 21 now. Because I know it's within my comfort zone compared to when I was like simply afraid back then and I didn't know how to like measure it. I didn't know how to measure myself or to chart difficulty. And this is why it's important where I mentioned that you have to have your feelings in check. Even if you're not the most confident person in real life, you can take what you know objectively yourself as a pump it up player. Like, hey, I know I can do certain levels comfortably. I know I can do certain skill sets. I have the stamina. Then you'll know how to push your limits, because otherwise it will be harder to gauge when you'll be ready to push. And if those things aren't in sync, the opportunities to get into the flow state or even warmed up can be a lot harder and take time. And I know I talked about warming up, but I will also say warming up is not necessary either. It can be completely optional. I like doing it because it makes me feel more in control, my body and mentally, but you don't need to do so. And mind you, some arcades are very busy sometimes. Like the queue lines can be insane where you might be forced to not warm up for longer periods of time and have to adapt and play like straight away or lack of warm up. Some people might not need to warm up at all. Some people might need a little bit. And for me, finding that efficient warm up time allowed me to spend less time in it and spend more time, again, playing the game and knowing when to push. We've talked about the mental side about pushing your limits. We've talked about player confidence, knowing the objective versus your feelings, knowing what you are and what you need to work on, why people warm up, and the states of a player throughout their session. This is Pump It Up philosophy, and I'm not sure if I really have any, physical tips. After all, this is philosophy. But here's my take. Something I noticed when I was abroad was that Korean players have serious grit. The definition is courage and resolve. Yeah, that definition sucks. Grit for Pump It Up is basically how long you can basically hold on to that intense strain for long periods of time. Physically, mentally, or it could be both. And so, how do you train his ability? I could just say the obvious, play more, which is actually pretty true. As I talked about, physically, you can train your heart for longer periods of time. So maybe something full song, or maybe like arcade length, maybe higher BPM, maybe runs. Those are things that I struggle with and I feel like would raise my heart rate up. How you can train your mental is just pretty much, just trying to overall be as calm as you can, not trying to shit your pants, keeping your composure as hard as it is. Don't give up. Knowing maybe how many measures are left, that could be actually really useful. Maybe having friends in the background cheering you on, that could be double-edged actually. And overall, maintain tension and try to maximize composure for as long as possible. And yes, I'm gonna go back to warming up, and I know I said that warming up helps me, but something that I also thought was very interesting at Korea was how conditioning myself when I didn't have a lot of time, and a lot of people just kind of go in. I noticed that for my heart especially, it was my heart didn't have a lot of time to kind of go up. So because I suddenly had to play something much harder where my heart kind of wasn't prepared for it, that level of intensity was it was spiked up. So it kind of forced my body to adapt and make sure I could play at that level. And again, this mileage may vary, but I think, at least for me when I was physically fit, this surprisingly worked pretty efficiently. Or you can just simply have that, just imagine you're Korean and just do not simply give a fuck about missing, or just, I swear to God, man, while you walk off the notes, they'll hit those notes. So I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural difference. That's all I have to say. I know it's been a while since my last philosophy video. I'm trying to really organize more of my thoughts into actual videos now, and I'm happy I finally got to make one. Trust me. Wait. I got the popcorn.